President Trump is trash-talking a Virginia restaurant after his press secretary, Sarah Sanders, is asked to leave. Sanders tweeted over the weekend that she was asked to leave the Red Hen restaurant in Lexington, Virginia, because she worked for President Trump. Sanders says she politely left and that the owner's actions say far more about her than about me. Joining me now to talk about the situation is Christopher Bedford, editor-in-chief of the Daily Caller and the author of The Art of the Donald. Chris, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, Chris, so Sarah Sanders isn't the only member of the Trump administration to face this kind of hostility. We saw Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen and Policy Advisor Stephen Miller were interrupted by protesters when they were at dinner. How, aside from just all the political divisiveness we have in this country, have we hit a new low where just working for the president, it's difficult to go out and just get a meal?
Actually, I think it's ramping back up again because things seemed to calm down for a little bit of time before this immigration order. A lot of the insanity that we saw on the campaign trail. I think maybe the worst we saw was on the campaign trail when you saw old men getting attacked in the streets trying to leave a rally, women getting pepper sprayed in the eyes by these Antifa guys, and that seemed to go down a little bit, but it's entered the mainstream, and now you've got congresswomen and congressmen and elected politicians rooting on mobs of people screaming and shouting and filming it in restaurants. And I was a bartender for 10 years. I've got my own point of view, but you're not up there like a priest serving communion. You're serving drinks, you're serving food, and you shouldn't bring your moral decisions into it. And you should take pride in your service and allow people to enjoy themselves. I would have happily served dinner to Barack Obama and his wife. I would have been honored to.
You mentioned Congress and some of the stuff that's going on there. Over the weekend, Democratic Congresswoman Maxine Waters encouraged supporters to quote, harass members of the president's cabinet. Should there be any consequences for that or other things that Congress lawmakers say?
It'd be nice if there were. It depends. You certainly you wouldn't be able to get her on anything legal, but she said that God is on the side of mobs chasing people from having a margarita and a taco. That seems unhinged. And I think the president's actually right to call it stupid. He's of course quick to bash back, and that's the thing. Was a lot of his cabinet members would be more used to the civil debates of normal D.C. politics, whereas the president's like a world wrestler when he gets up there on the national stage. He's used to this kind of stuff, and I guess now they're trying to target people who generally should just be treated with a level of respect and decorum.
Well, you know, you mentioned President Trump in that, and you know he's often accused of saying this same type of rhetoric on Twitter, for example. How do we put an end to what has sort of become the new normal here in Washington and sort of get back to civil discourse?
So I don't think we will, unfortunately.
Not anytime soon.
If I could think of something, I'll definitely get back to you. Civil discourse in Washington, I think, is every presidency we have, people talk about where has civility gone. But if you go back through the old campaign ads and the newspaper ads that Adams and Jefferson ran against each other, they were vicious, they were lies, there were smears, there were allegations of children out of wedlock. There was all kinds of stuff that swirled around early colonial politics. And of course, then you got a guy like Andrew Jackson who killed a man in the duel, and he probably would have killed 10 more if they'd let him. He was a mean son of a gun, and that was Washington, D.C. civility. So now we're at a level where we have people insulting each other openly and making each other uncomfortable in restaurants, and that's not a good place to be. I don't see any level of actual civil discourse returning, unfortunately.
Well, do you think because there is this lack of civil discourse, do you think that interrupts actual policy making in terms of actually creating laws, gridlock in Congress? Is it contributing to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Back in the day, a lot of Republicans and Democrats would hang out together. I hear this complaint all the time from senators and congressmen. They don't know each other anymore. Things are too polarized. If one side thinks that the other side are Nazis, then how could there ever be any discussion here? If one side, the divides between the parties have become so severe. There are no more conservative Democrats. There's a few liberal Republicans who are willing to go over, but less so all the time. And I would normally say that something tragic happening might actually bring people back together. But even, it was just a year ago, we saw the baseball shooting where many, many members of the Republican Party were shot down and nearly killed. And that civility lasted about 1 month.
Yeah, and then it kind of slowly faded away after that. Well, it is a concerning situation, but obviously one that's important to address and to at least talk about. Christopher Bedford, editor-in-chief of the Daily Caller and author of The Art of the Donald. Thanks so much for talking with us about it.
Thank you.